Good evening, everybody. Today is Tuesday, April 6th, and this is a regular Moscow City Council meeting. And it is terrific to have all of our councilors for once in our chambers here together. We haven't had that for quite some time, so it is great. We got a great crowd here this evening as well. With that, if you would all please rise with me, I will lead us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. My first order of business is a proclamation for fair housing. Whereas in April 2021 marks the 53rd anniversary of the passage of Title VIII of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, commonly known as the Federal Fair Housing Act. And whereas the Idaho Human Rights Commission Act was prohibited discrimination in housing since 1969. And whereas equal opportunity for all, regardless of race, color, religion, sex, disability, family status, or national origin, is a fundamental goal of our nation, state, and city. And whereas equal access to housing is an important component of this goal, as fundamental as the right to equal education and employment. And whereas housing is a critical component of family and community health and stability, and whereas housing choice impacts our children's access to education, our ability to seek and retain employment options, the cultural benefits we enjoy, the extent of our exposure to crime and drugs, and the quality of health care we receive in emergencies. And whereas the laws of the United States and our own state of Idaho seek to ensure such equality of choice for all transactions involving housing, and whereas ongoing education, outreach, monitoring are key to raising awareness of fair housing principles, practices, rights, and responsibilities. And whereas the mission of the city's Fair and Affordable Housing Commission includes researching, analyzing, and recommending to the mayor and the council ways in which the city may further fair housing practices. And whereas among the duties of Fair and Affordable Housing Commission are to review the city's code analysis and impediments to fair housing and action plan each year, and to recommend changes as it may deem necessary. And whereas only through continued cooperation, commitment, and support of all Idahoans can barriers to fair housing be removed. Now therefore, I, Bill Lambert, the mayor of the city of Moscow, Idaho, do hereby proclaim April 2021 to be Fair Housing Month in the city of Moscow, and I urge all citizens to support programs and policies that prevent or eliminate discriminatory housing practices. And with that, we will move on to the consent agenda.
I move approval of consent agenda as presented.
Maureen seconded. Her hand was up. Okay, we got a motion by Art and a second by Maureen to approve the consent agenda as is. I'll start the roll with Gina.
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
Art.
Aye.
Brandy.
Aye.
Maureen.
Aye.
And Ann.
Aye.
Okay, with that, item number 2, staff recognition report. Gary, do you have anything tonight, sir? Mayor's appointments, there is none this evening. Public comment, mayor's response period for 15 minutes. We like to hear what's on people's minds. If they would hang on a second, David, you can come on up here, walk on up here while you're waiting for me to give my speech here. As long as it is not something in front of planning and zoning and or the Board of Adjustments and or on this evening's agenda. And with that, Dave, you got 3 minutes, but you need to tell us who you are, even though I know who you are.
David Hall, 1334 Wallen Road. This IDWR is Department of Water Resources, not Division, to be accurate in your minutes.
Okay.
I'm concerned about the 2 large housing developments proposals, one on West Palouse River Drive and one on Trail Road.
Your Honor, if I may, that is a quasi-judicial matter to come before P&Z and council. Okay. And those comments aren't being made in a public hearing.
With that being said, David, as they come in front of those bodies.
A water issue that's not been brought up?
You've already identified that your comments are relating to those two large developments, so
Okay.
you stand the chance of the council having a conflict of interest. I'm sorry, David.
However, David will have a chance to do testimony in front of planning and zoning. When a public hearing comes, David, you'll be more than welcome to give your testimony.
If I may, Your Honor?
Yes.
Also, there have been some questions about the coverage of those various developments. If the public has any questions, they can certainly contact Michael Ray, our planning manager, and he can talk to you about the particulars, even though the elected officials in P and Z cannot.
Okay, thank you, Gary, for that information.
Do you have an idea that you could tell them, like, when it's coming before P and Z and when it's coming before council?
I'm not sure if the application's been made. I'm assuming that they'll come through P and Z sometime in May
Okay.
or later, so it'll be a good, the local land use planning act, I think, requires 15 days notice, so
Okay.
it won't be in April, I don't believe.
I see Bill Belknap on the screen. Bill, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Just to clarify, what specific projects were we looking at the timeline?
Excuse me, Bill, I'm sorry?
Was it a particular subdivision that there was a request about?
The division,
The two subdivisions that are
the
gonna be,
northeast and the southwest
Yes.
subdivisions.
the two large subdivisions that are gonna be,
I think we have, only one has actually filed an application with the city, that is the one located in the southeast portion of the city, or southwest, I should say. That's probably not gonna be going to P and Z until the first meeting in May. I think that's the first meeting in June.
okay, thank you, Bill.
The proposed development in the northeast part of the community, they have not filed an application with the city.
Okay. Okay, with that being said, are there others that would like to come up and have public comment? Okay, seeing none others come, we will go ahead and move on. Whoop,
She did it when you raised her hand.
pardon me?
She did raise her hand.
Oh, well, come up, miss, and you can tell us your name and your address, and you've got 3 minutes.
Jean Elliott. I'm associated with 1050 Hull Road, Viola, Idaho, which is out in the county. It would be very helpful if someone could take it upon themselves to write out for the public how this works as far as city meetings and county meetings. I've been confused about what you can say when and the reasons why. So if anyone would ever be able to come up with a handout so that we could be more informed, because obviously David came here with things on his mind and now he cannot speak those things. So I just think it would be very helpful. I've thought of that in the past too. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Elliott. Gary, have we got something like that that's,
Yeah, we have a public service handbook, and we have various handbooks that deal with that. I'd have to check back on the website to see exactly how it's called out, but that information is readily available. So we could push that out. I'm sorry that if there's any confusion about that.
but that's something that should be on our website so that
Sure.
citizens can take a look at it and. All right. Are there others? David, you have a question?
Can I add?
Please come up here, Dave, so Gary can hear you, and you're on the record, and everyone can see you and hear you.
David Hall, can I speak on water use in general and not related to these developments?
That's entirely up to the chair of the meeting, the mayor. If it's not related to those particular developments, then however you have commented, so I'd leave it up to the mayor to make that decision.
Dave, I'll let you go ahead. You've got 2 minutes and
Be very
45
brief.
seconds, sir.
City of Moscow needs a water use budget to determine how much water is used by any users coming in, and how to balance water use. It was on a goal about 10 years ago, I think, in the city council, and was actually funded. and then it disappeared off of the goals. And I think city needs to look at a water use budget again. I've started talking with the Sustainable Environment Commission, and I think they'll be looking into it, but it's something important for conserving our aquifers. Thank you.
Thank you, David. One thing I will say to everybody about water usage and PBAC and this sort of thing, and we have talked with a number of times and have had some goals set and have had some ideas about replenishing our water system, whether that would be replenishing our deep aquifer or both aquifers or a reservoir or whatever. The PBAC has came up, as you well know, David, with 4 different solutions. And I encourage, and we've been talking about this for years and years and years, and what we need to do, in my view, is go after replenishing our aquifers with the availability of runoff that we have. And I don't know which direction we're going to head, but it's coming close in time where we really do need to make that decision and move forward and maybe have a refinement plant. But I know those things are being spoke about, and hopefully this coming fall, when we have our regular annual PBAC meeting, we'll be able to be back to normal so that we can talk about that and get it really drilled down, literally. No pun intended there, but that's something that's very important for this whole Palouse region. Anyway, with that, I'll be quiet and I'll ask if there's anybody else who would like to have a comment before we move on. Okay, well, we'll go to item number 5, Citizens Commission Report, and this is on Fair and Affordable Housing Commission. We got Amy with us this evening, Heinrich, and we also have Randy Bacall somewhere on Zooming with us, and that ties right into our proclamation that I read earlier. Amy, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm going to share my screen. You all see that on Zoom as well? I'm going to assume so. I'm here tonight to introduce Randy Bockel, Chair of the Fair and Affordable Housing Commission. Randy has been Chair of the Commission since 2014, when shortly after that in 2015 he became Chair. And I'm looking for the remote for the presentation. Oh, on this side, sorry. Randy's held that position since 2015, and we are very grateful for his time and commitment to the community and on the commission. So with that, I'll turn the time over to Randy.
Randy, you with us?
Yes, Mayor, I am here. Thank you very much. Thanks for having us here.
Absolutely.
It's been a nice introduction. And council members, I appreciate the opportunity to stand before you, even though it's by Zoom. These last couple of years, as everybody knows, have been kind of challenging here in the new way of doing things. But we have still been able to maintain some conversations within our commission, and we've attempted to implement some of the conversations that we have had and reviewed some of the prior years' decisions. But generally speaking, I think, Amy, you have this PowerPoint set up there.
I do. Can you see it on Zoom?
I cannot. You know,
Let's-
share your screen.
Oh, well, let's fix that. Let's fix that real quick. There we go. Now can you see? Okay, all right. Sorry about that.
As an overview, we have really 2 topics, fair housing and then affordable housing. And very, very big discussions on both sides of that, but in many ways, both of these topics come together. There's a lot of things that connect the 2 of them. So we're looking for ways and suggestions in which the city may codes and how they apply to the previous analysis of impediments to fair housing, which we had developed an action plan for several years ago, just to make sure that the steps that we had identified in that action plan have all been addressed and identified if we're moving forward on some of those issues, or possibly some of those are falling by the wayside, or if we're losing ground on them. We have identified that, generally speaking, we are making progress, we are moving forward on all of those particular issues. We look for ways that the city can promote affordable housing, and when we do have recommendations, we should present those to the city council. We consult on fair housing planning objectives and communications, and then assist in coordinating any execution of those plans. We also then make recommendations to the mayor and the council of any necessary changes in the Moscow Fair and Affordable Housing Ordinance. And then we're watching federal, state, and other programs that might provide some assistance for us in executing some of these things. So that's just a brief overview of the things that we discuss and get involved in. There are 9 positions available on our commission. 7 of them are taken. We have 2 vacancies. But as Amy had mentioned, I've been the chair since, I guess, 2015. Casey Holcomb Hawks has been on our commission ever since I signed up on it, I believe. But Linda Pike, Bruce Pittman, Joe Ellen Force, Arthur Darrow, and Rebecca Marquez are all very valuable members of this commission, and they all bring forth brilliant ideas and great conversations. So we didn't get to present to City Council last year because that was right in the beginning of all of this COVID stuff. This report's kind of covering the span of these last 2 years. Parts of the things that we do, outreach and education. We have, of course, April every year is Fair Housing Month, which you just proclaimed here just a few minutes ago here. We prepare and recommend to the council adoption of a resolution of 2020-08, which established the guiding principles of affordable housing for Moscow. We sponsor the annual fair housing training. Last year, we did that by Zoom. There's always been an in-person training until then. We did have 35 people joining in on that last year. The head count was down a little bit from when it used to be live in person. But this particularly addresses property managers, realtors, and bankers are invited to it as well. There's issues that are presented there that property managers in particular need to be tuned into. Each year, except for last year, we've sponsored a table at the farmers market. We will do that again this coming year. And 2 years ago, we participated in the Health and Wellness Fair Table. Last year, that one was canceled, but we expect to be able to do that again next year. And then moving on, the tenant rights and responsibilities. We produced a couple little brochures and pamphlets for a handout that have been very, very useful. There's one of them that focuses on rights, the other one focuses on responsibilities. And there's things in there that a lot of people don't know anything about. But we do think that it's got to balance the rights and responsibilities both on the tenant side as well as the property manager's side. We maintain a number of resources on our section of the city's web page that can read any individual I'm going to deviate for just a wee moment here. There's always been a lot of talk and conversation about attainable housing and affordable housing. Those both have definitions that relate to the median household income within our area. But there's also been another word that has been identified that we've been trying to get our arms around. And there is accessible housing. And if we take that thought in relationship to the homelessness, I think that there's a huge area there that we may have been overlooking in specific terms in previous years. So attainable, affordable, and now accessible. So I'm going to keep that word in mind as we move forward and some of our conversations as well. We've also developed a new retractable banner. It's very attractive and it really catches your eye. So when we're at functions at the farmer's market or at the health and wellness fair, gives people something to focus on and comes over and draws out questions and conversations regarding our educational outreach programs. So upcoming activities, we're going to continue researching and we're going to prepare for a new assessment of fair housing or another analysis of impediments. Enough years have gone by, it's time to reach out to the community and get a new grasp on this. We're going to be doing it ourselves this year, so we're not going to be hiring any consultants or anybody to begin to it. We're going to be looking for deeper information and more specific information than what they've been able to provide for us in the past. We're going to be holding the Spring Fair housing training event again, which will be by Zoom. And we do, I think, have a date set to attend the farmers market for the summer, which will be another educational outreach program. So, in the short and sweet, Mayor and council members, that's kind of where we're at this point. Do you have any questions of us?
Well, Randy, thank you for that commission report. And fair and affordable housing, when our access to housing, is very important not only to myself but the counselors up here. And we all know, geez, looking at the sales of houses and the prices of them, they've just gone through sky high these last several years. But anyway, and so that's something that we need, of course, to work for. Does anybody on the council have any questions or comments to Randy?
Just one quick.
Sandra?
Gosh, I wanted to say thanks because I've reached out a couple times with questions to some of the different commissioners. And I just appreciate how knowledgeable they are about everything and how if they don't have answers, they work to find them. They've been super valuable to me this year, and I just wanted to tip my hat to them because they do great work.
Randy, thank you so much, and the commission, and please express our gratitude for the work that they've been doing. And as we inch along, we're going to get more back to normal as we go, and we will get there. So thank you for that fine report. And thank you, Amy. Okay, with that, we're going to move on to item number 6, Moscow Volunteer Fire Department Annual Report. We have Chief Nickerson with us tonight.
Your Honor,
yes.
if we could take a brief recess for a technical matter. The sound's coming out of the TV instead of the speakers. We're worried that it's not going to broadcast on social
Well,
media.
you want to take
so-
like a 5-minute recess?
Yeah, of course, you can have a
5-minute
chance to
recess.
take a look.
Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome back, everybody. We will resume our meeting, and we are at item number 6, Moscow Volunteer Fire Department report by our Chief Nickerson. Brian, you have the podium, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council members and members of the public. This is our annual report for 2020. Since it was a challenging year, we'll go over a couple things in here, but statistically, we'll go through some statistics and like we do every year. So all of last year, and we run this data all the way from January 1 through December 31st, just for reference. 73% of our calls last year was EMS or rescue type calls, which includes motor vehicle accidents and so forth like that. I have a note down there at the bottom because we do share the reporting system with the rural fire district. So 114 of the total call volume for the entire year was included in the data, included 114 calls outside of the city, including EMS calls and or vehicle accidents or rescue calls, if that makes sense. The examples, you'll go back, you'll see here, there's such things called hazardous conditions with no fire. What does that mean? I'll show you that here in just a second. But we did have some severe events, severe weather, obviously last year, the wind, and some minor flooding and so forth. So we track all that stuff. On a typical windstorm type evening, the one most recently, and this is just in January, we ran 19 calls in 3 hours. So it was a little busy during that wind event. So we can get busy very quickly with calls of service to the community. So that's how we track those in particular. Even though a tree may fall on a house or something like that, but that's still a severe weather event. So hazardous condition, basically that line item says it's either a gas leak, power line, or something to that effect. The service call is water problem. We actually do get calls for water that won't shut off in a residence, or overflowing toilets that go down below and to the apartment below. We're an all service, all community fire department. So smoke removal, we assist the police on certain events and certain things. And unauthorized burning, which we do get obviously when the burn ban is in effect. And right now, currently, burn is open for the next couple weeks. A good intent call is something that we were dispatched to originally, and possibly that they either didn't need us for some reason or another. They called back and said, please don't come, which we get that on occasion. Authorized burning, that means that somebody called on their neighbor because they were burning during this time. So we go over, check it out, it's all good. So that's how we track that. And then any special incidents, such as we get complaints on certain things, which we don't get very many of them, hardly at all. So in regards to calls and so forth. So responses for the year. This is 6 years worth of data. So for total last year, in 2020, we had 2,307 calls. Going back to 2019, which we didn't do a report last year, we did 2,347. You can see we had a drop in 2018 and so on. The busiest year so far in the last 5 years since we're tracking this data this way, obviously, was 2017. And again, 114 calls for this year alone, included the calls outside the city. So out of all those incidents, that's the numbers, 56 fire events. That's house fires, that's chimney fires, that's vehicle fires, all kinds of fires. So it breaks it all down into those line items. The interesting part here is the bottom line is 723 of our incidents were typically on top of each other, if not 2 calls, if not 3 calls. So that basically means 31% of the time our calls were overlapping each other. So we're out on an event, and then simultaneously we have another event, or possibly 2, 3, 4 events at the same time. So those are all covered, no issues. So that's, and we've averaged probably over the last 5, 6 years, we've probably averaged around 30 to 35%, give or take, overlapping calls. So it's pretty consistent that way.
And when you say that, you don't mean 2 different people calling about the same event? You mean
No,
2
that is
different
correct. So there could be a fire at City Hall today, right now, but also there's a vehicle fire over at the mall. And then there's an alarm sounding over at the other mall. So it's simultaneous events at different locations. So it's, it can be a challenge, but we don't really have any issues covering all those. And it's just, it's amazing the volunteers that we have and the staff that we have. That we can cover all that. Yep.
Do you mind if we ask you questions in the middle of your presentation?
Okay.
You're doing it already.
Go ahead.
I was just following up on I mean,
Yep.
Do you pull people off of one incident and put them on another one?
It's all about resource management.
Uh-huh.
So, and that's what we teach our command officers is if you don't need that resource at that event, then send them to the next event. So the 19 calls, for example,
Yeah.
I went to a couple
Right.
by myself, but also there's the engine that took care of another one. There's another command officer that took care of another one. So in that case, in 3 hours, 19 calls, you can do the average. How busy we were in different locations around the city. So it's just resource management, and we provide the resources that are needed for that particular event. If that's a bigger event, we'll send more resources.
Great.
And we have mutual aid partners that we can partner with as well. So, false alarms, this is something when I started here, I know before I got here, if I remember correct, Gary, that it got implemented of being able to write a ticket, if you will, if there's too many excessive alarms at one location. So in the last year, we had 191 false alarms. It's slightly up from the last 2 years. We've averaged about 160, 65, depends what year. But we don't typically write tickets much anymore. We didn't really back even when I started. But education is a big thing. Meeting with the fraternities, the sororities, the business owners, and all that is about education and talking to them. Because it doesn't solve their alarm problem. Because sometimes it is the alarm problem, and they just need to be educated on making sure you follow up with your alarm company and so forth like that. So we haven't wrote a ticket for the last few years. But we've met a lot of people along the way that really have taken care of their businesses and fraternities, sororities, apartments, and hotels and all that. Fire investigations. So currently, as you probably know, since in 2018 we had several fires out on West Palouse River Drive. Those fires are still under investigation and still considered open. We haven't had any new information regarding those, but they will remain open for as long as we need to and find out information. And as it says down there at the bottom, we continue to partner with the Moscow Police Department in all of our investigations with their detectives and so forth. They're a big help for us. It's a great resource for us. And we're looking at doing some additional training with them in the near future to make us both better. So incidents by month, and there's a reason we do a couple of these graphs, is because of obviously there's some things with, hey, is it the influx of students coming into the community because of colleges starting or closing in the summer? And you'll see this information, and there's not a whole lot of difference. It's relatively flat. The red lines are 2020, and the grayish lines are 2019. So basically, our busiest month is basically October, most typical years, and that's basically consistent for the last 4 or 5 years even. So it's not because they come here in August or September. It's over time, and it just plus winter season comes around, heating appliances get turned on. So there's a lot of different factors that relate into why some of these are the way they are. So it's pretty interesting to look at some of this data. We have data tracking all the way back to 2015. So when we started tracking all these by month and so forth. The busiest day of the week, some would say it's always Friday. Not always. It's Tuesday, and you'll see here in a little bit, it's in the afternoon. It's not at night necessarily. So you can see, like I said, relatively each day you can't see a huge spike. In some locations around the country, they can run these reports and say, we know on Friday night or Saturday afternoon or Wednesday evening because of this, we know we're going to run 10, 15 extra calls. We already know that. And they can staff appropriately, whether it's volunteer, career, or whatever. We can't really do that because we have no idea, because it's relatively consistent each month, each day. There is no real thing that stands out that helps us plan for that particular types of events. So it's just, I thought it would when I got here, when I started doing all this, but it's relatively even across the board. Time of the day, that gets a little bit to where there's a little more trend, if you will. So calls typically pick up from around 10 o'clock in the morning-ish, and then they run till around 7, 8 o'clock at night. So one would think, midnight, 2, 3, 4 a.m., That's our lowest call volumes. So, again, it's interesting data. And if we were to plan something for a day, during the day, we could actually say, hey, our busiest times are at least these 6, 8 hours, 9 hours, that we need to maybe have some extra staff or something, volunteers or whatever, to be able to do that. Inspections, last year, even with COVID, we did 421 inspections. We had 268 correction notices issued. And that just means there was something that was noted on there. 54 passed with no comment, 99 passed with a comment, and 7 re-inspections, only 7 re-inspections were conducted just because of the COVID stuff and the situation that we were in. So we didn't put Matt out there too far. Once we started getting to a point, it was just better to have him in the office, and there was plenty of work for him to do. Yes?
What are you inspecting?
We are inspecting, I don't know if I got on the next slide or not.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. Types of inspections.
Wait, can I back up one more at the last one?
Yeah.
So where you said there were the 268 correction notices, do those normally have a re-inspection that follows?
Not necessarily. It depends on the severity.
Okay.
Because going back on something that was, your light bulb is burned out on an exit sign is not really, we're going to spend more time out there. The trust is that you're going to fix that. You're going to send us an email, and you're going to tell us that, hey, by the way, I got that fixed.
Okay.
It basically goes back to that communication piece, to where we'll try to work with them and trust them that they're going to do that, because we're going to see on the report over the next year, 2, 3 years, you'll see that that same thing still exists, even though that possibly either didn't get fixed or there's a problem with that device maybe. So, but we work with the business owners and have them send us a note versus having to go back. Now, if it's a very severe thing, that's a whole other conversation of going back and revisiting. Types of inspections. Assembly basically equals restaurants, places of gathering. Mercantile, places of business. Multifamily, the only thing we do on the apartments basically is the outside, make sure their fire extinguishers are up to date, their fire alarm is working, and checked or tested. Fraternities and sororities we do twice a year. The benefit we have here in Moscow is most of the fraternities and sororities do have sprinkler systems and alarm systems. So protection-wise, they're good, but also some of the visits have gleaned itself to have tape on smoke detectors and so forth like that. So we do, and typically if we have a fire alarm there, we will do a once around the building to make sure that nothing stands out, that, hey, by the way, your smoke detectors are hanging down or whatever, not obstructed or something like that. But I can tell you over the last 2 years, the fraternities and sororities have raised the bar. They are fantastic. You get to see ones and twos here and there, but they are really doing what they say they're going to do and following through. It's amazing. And then there's business offices. Volunteer staffing. We haven't done this one before. We went back to as far as we can get, 2009. So this is how many total volunteers that we've had on our staff during each year, if you will. We couldn't find anything for 2010, so, but you can see picking up from 92 and 2009, averaging around 110 up until 2018, and then we increased, and we're still up this year at 124 volunteer members in the organization. So we are doing rather well. We have an academy going on right now, which we'll get to here in a minute. But yeah, our volunteer staffing numbers are doing really well. We just interviewed a couple today that are probably going to come. One's coming from California, and so forth. So it's pretty exciting. So events, due to COVID, obviously the whole community didn't hold a lot of events, so we didn't have a lot of events to cover. Just events overall. We did have an opportunity to escort a few of the high school teams out of town to go to state. So we did do that. The department internally canceled all the events for 2020, the picnic and banquet and all those things. So it was pretty disappointing, but just like everybody else, hopefully this year we'll be able to come back and do that. The one thing of note, the volunteer and the career staffing was maintained during this whole COVID event. We did not reach a critical point internally to cause of concern to respond to any incidents in the community. And that's just a testament to the way our volunteers and career staff handled themselves. Wear a mask regularly, everywhere, even when they're not volunteering, at their jobs and all that. Our staff wore it. We worked remotely. We had people with COVID, I mean, just like everybody else. But I can say with certainty that EOs for the corporation. So that's a big change. And they also elected a communications officer. So Dan Karskalen is the CEO of the corporation, and Jody Walker is the communications officer, and there's 8 representatives on the board. So it's going well. It's going actually really well. Got bumps in the road, but it's amazing to me how resilient people are and with change and so forth. So we're doing really well. We changed from a company model to what's called a station model. So basically now everybody is broken up into stations. It doesn't matter if you're an EMS or fire. You're assigned to a station. That does not mean that's where you respond to. That just remains that on training nights and meeting nights, that's typically where you would go, rather than going to a certain location with a company. The station model also lends itself to have a battalion chief, a fire captain, and EMS captain at each station to organizationally have structure to that, and then along with all the volunteer EMS and fire staff. So it's different, it's change, but it's working. Again, bumps in the road, but we're figuring it out, and we're moving forward. So.
Well, Brian, with that being said, that the volunteers were the ones that came up with the bylaw reorganization itself, correct?
Yep, that's correct.
And so they're comfortable with it, and it's working
Yep.
fine. And so it seems to me like that was getting more involvement from our volunteers. Your numbers are up really nicely, and so it appears to me like that's being
Yep.
run very well.
Yeah, again, we have our days, but
Sure.
but I think overall, I think we're doing remarkably well,
Well,
and
we all-
especially trying to tackle this stuff at the same
Well,
time.
we all have our days. It doesn't matter if it's us or anybody
That's
sitting out in
true.
the audience.
That's
It's the way,
true.
that's just part of called life. but-
That's true.
Okay, great.
How do you decide which station someone's going to get assigned to? Just on a
How do we assign a station? Basically, initially, it was based on just sheer numbers. We took everybody, split them up based on experience, and then also a little bit of geographic, but yet not. Now, it's all about a number at a station. So if we see that, hey, we're 3 down over here on fire over at Station 2, well, the next person in, you're going to go to Station 2. Or you're going to, depending on that. So it's just, there's really no set in stone.
But you actually make sure that there's a certain level of
Yes.
experience in each station.
Right. And that over time, it'll improve itself. Station 1's going to have more than 2s and 3s, only because it has more equipment. So again, we already kind of know that, but yeah, it's based on sheer number. So, and everybody initially had their opportunity to actually, we polled everybody, did a survey. What is your first choice? What is your second choice? What is your third choice? And I would say 98% of everybody got their first choice.
Great.
Only because it was just that easy. It just turned out that even. It was kind of amazing. I think some of them actually like, hey, let's do this together and we'll make sure we're there, right? So retirements, most recently, the following individuals retired from the organization. Monty McMillan, Andy Cowles, Darren Erie, Andy Crossler, John Moran, Jason Henderson, Andrew Domrus. These are all longtime members who retired. They are still members of the rural fire district. So, but I think it's a big deal and that they get recognized for their many, many, many years of service. I think one of them has like 35 years. So kudos to them, and I appreciate them. I hope they come back sometime, but we'll see how that goes. But I think that they're a good group of people, and hopefully they'll continue to be successful as well. So Projects in the upcoming, hopefully, and talking to Gary, we'll pick up the volunteer strategic planning maybe later this year at some point in time, maybe this fall, and talking to Dan Carscallon. So that's an opportunity. We didn't get to meet last year, but the Station 1 remodel was completed, and I can tell you that the lounge downstairs is being used regularly even during COVID. It's amazing to bring people together, and we get out the door a little quicker. So it's actually worked with what the plan kind of was, so it's been doing good. Recruitment and retention of volunteers and resident program, that's ongoing every year, every day. And we still partner with LCSC and their fire science program. They've had the modification, obviously, because of budget cuts and all those type of things as well, but we're still providing that internally here in town. Continued, two big projects on the plate is the volunteer policies and procedures. Since obviously the new bylaws went into effect, the board is moving forward with writing a total new policies and procedures. And we have partnered, the city has partnered with the volunteers to purchase or buy into, a system called Lexipol. And basically that's a system that you can buy into that has a lot of this data and information and policies, and you tweak it and modify it to your need. And it's vetted by numerous attorneys around the country and fire service, EMS service professionals, and it's all basically geared towards if you do go to court, and Amia would like this, if you do, it is vetted. It is some vetted stuff, so it's important to know that what we're going to get and what we're going to work on is actually true and tested to the standard, so which is good. The other big project is station and training facility study location. I talked to Gary about this, about the budget and all that stuff. So similar to the fair and affordable housing about doing their own internal study, we're going to do our study internal as well. We have the people, we have the knowledge, we have all that information. We will provide it, put it together. It may take us a little bit longer, but I think in the end, I think we're going to have the same or like type product, I think, in the end, because of the growth in the community and all those things and maybe what we can do. Hopefully we're going to move forward with an engine, order a new engine 20 probably next spring. So that we'll start looking at that later this fall with Carl in the shop, and then Station 2. And then we're going to continue to build relationships with the rural. So, that's an ongoing thing with the commissioners and the rural members and so forth. So, so that's going to be over this next year. And then the caveat at the very end is the Idaho Fire Chiefs. I'm the District 2 representative for the Idaho Fire Chiefs Association, and we put together a survey statewide amongst volunteer organizations, because 80% of Idaho is volunteer fire and EMS services. So we put together a survey to get feedback on what we can go approach the legislature with, to say, how can you help the volunteers in this state? What can we do to help incentivize more? The feedback that we've got locally from this area, from the county, is that some of the folks kind of reduced a lot their participation because of the COVID stuff, because they have their own jobs. They're self-employed, the insurance and all those things. And if there's things that we can do to help, whatever that incentive is, what incentivizes one person does not incentivize another. So we had almost 700 responses in less than 3 weeks, which is probably about 400 more than we thought. So we really did good with the data. So I've got a meeting next week with the small group, and then we're going to present it at the Idaho Chiefs meeting in May. It's really good information, that the incentives and stuff, and hopefully even internally in the city we can do a few extra things too, possibly down the road. So training, every year we have a fall academy EMT class. We also had a spring fire academy and EMT class this year. So our training is multi-company, multi-discipline, and that's part of the station model as well. And then the command officers get specialized training on Blue Card, which is basically a system that we've purchased. It's out of Phoenix, Arizona, but it applies, the terminology applies, the approach and all that applies, and the guys and gals have got a lot out of it. I can tell on the radio, even, it's amazing. So, all right. Any
Good presentation,
Any
Chief. I think there were some questions answered, and things are looking good for the volunteer fire department. It's exciting, some of the new changes and what the volunteers are doing and keeping up with things. Any questions for the chief from council? Thank you, Brandy.
What do you think, the change in the CEO process being elected by the volunteers, how do you expect that? Like, what benefit would that have, or how is that going to be different? I'm just curious.
It's coming
with the
from
organization.
within
Yeah.
the organization rather than me being a city employee.
Mm-hmm.
So it's creating a little bit of a separation, but yet the CEO is going to work well with me or whoever. And I think that it's going to go further because it's internally elected, not necessarily hired by or whatever. So, and like I said, so far, all the meetings have been,
Yeah, I mean, it sounds
You know,
like a
it's-
pretty good approach.
yeah, it is. I mean, I think, and even when I arrived here, that was one of the conversations. I mean, I probably wasn't here probably a month. You know, you hear a lot of things the first month. Yeah, so again, I mean, but it's been going on for years.
Yeah.
You know, that's been discussed for a long time. About, hey, let's do our own, and let's you know, so I understand it. And I have no good for that if it's going to help them and stuff, and that's what it's about. So
Well,
I think it'll be good in the
Hopefully it
end.
helps Chief too.
I
So it
think
works
so.
all
I
around.
hope.
Gina?
Chief, as you know, I was your council liaison for a couple of years, and I sat through a good share of those meetings where the changes, you could feel how necessary they were, and yet how painful it was. And I have to applaud you and the volunteer fire department for gutting it out. These are good, solid changes, and I'm proud to say that I got to walk a little of the ways with you, but thank you for the efforts and your leadership in this moment. It was hard, but well fought, sir.
Thank you.
Ann?
Yeah, I have a comment and a question. I think it's great to see the little uptick in number of volunteers, recognizing that the last couple of years were unusually high, but that's a nice peak over the last decade. And then I just had one small question. I'm curious, for the company model, were there multiple companies, or was the entire squad one?
Yeah, there was basically 5 companies, 6, 7, 8, rescue, and ambulance.
Gotcha.
So some of that created some division, if you will, amongst the groups. So this model, it breaks it down into 3 groups, but also there's leadership at each of those stations too. So the battalion chiefs and the captains didn't have the responsibility of a station, of the apparatus, and the people. They basically were assigned to take the duty, assign the calls, and then participate in the company meetings and so forth like that. So now they have that buy-in and some pride and ownership into their stations. And I can tell you that 2 of the stations already have their own swag designed. So I've been encouraging that for a long time. That provides pride and ownership in something. And whenever you have that thing or that piece or that facility or that truck or apparatus, you're going to buy into it. And they were already meeting in January. I think some were doing it in December, but they've got two designs already. One's going to get approved hopefully tomorrow night. Yeah, so it's a good thing.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to item number 7, adoption of the fair housing resolution. We have Elisa somewhere with us. Elisa, you out there on Zoom? There she is.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Can
You've
everyone
got
hear
the
me
floor.
okay?
Yes.
Well, before you tonight, I have a continuation of the theme for this evening in celebrating Fair and Affordable Housing Month. Tonight, I'm bringing forth just a slight modification to the 2020 Fair Housing Resolution. A little bit of history behind this is that, as you know, we receive Idaho Department of Commerce Community Development Block Grants. And as a grantee, there are lots of requirements that we have to follow. And one of them is that we have certain practices and obligations that affirmatively further fair housing. And as stated in the staff report I provided, we have to certify that we're doing certain things. And most of those items were actually covered in the proclamation and also within the commission report this evening. So I'll just quickly highlight those. But step one is to designate a fair and affordable housing resource person, which is Amy. And then approval of the publication of the Fair Housing Resolution that's been updated, which is what we're doing tonight. And then complete a fair housing assessment, which they'll be updating this year, it sounded like, according to the commission. And then step 4, proclaim April is Fair Housing Month, which the mayor did through the proclamation this evening. And then step 5 is display fair housing information throughout the community and on different bulletin boards. And I myself have put some things up. I know the commission does, and they hand out things at different events. And so I think we're pretty well covered there. The only thing that we updated in the resolution tonight, which was reviewed by the city attorney and compared with the newest version of the guidelines that the Department of Commerce forwarded to us, and their HUD is over the Department of Commerce, so those come from the federal government. Everything stayed the same except for we just added familial status to a couple of the paragraphs to make the wording more consistent. And so the resolution you have before you tonight is really pretty much the same as it was in the past year. We did have a revamp of it about 3 years ago, but we're still meeting all the requirements, and the verbiage of the resolution is the most current that's available. So with that, I'd take any questions, or we could move forward with the resolution.
Okay, questions for Lisa? Art?
Nope. Seems pretty straightforward and just a continuation of what we've got going in order to receive the CDBG grants. So I would make a motion to adopt the proposed fair housing resolution.
Second.
Okay. Okay, we've got a motion by Art and a second by Gina to approve, to adopt the proposed fair housing resolution. I'll start the roll with Ann.
Aye.
Maureen.
Aye.
Brandy.
Aye.
Gina.
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
And Art.
Aye.
Okay, you do have the resolution. Lisa, thank you very much for that presentation.
Thank you, Council. Have a good evening.
Okay, as well. Okay, now we'll move on to item number 8, community events application and permits update. We have Amanda Argona with us this evening. Hello, Amanda.
Good evening, Mayor and council members, staff, and the public. Let's see, one second here. Oh. Hello.
That was great. Well done.
There you go. Lots of windows open here. This is where we are.
Here we are.
What other one? Hit the left one?
Mm-hmm.
Are we good? Yep, we're good. Okay. All right. Thanks, Lori. So before you all this evening is community event applications and permits update, which was presented to administrative committee meeting March 22nd, which feels like a lifetime ago, and things are just flying by. So just as an overview, the community events division processes typically about 45 to 50 applications. We review them and then they are permitted. Chief Nickerson touched on this earlier. They get reviewed by fire, police, community development, engineering, so on and so forth, to make sure there's no issues, as they typically take place in the public right-of-way. Events that we look at are fun runs, bike-a-thons, marches, rallies, block parties, parades, so on and so forth. And it's the same process that many events that are associated with the city follow, so farmers market, art walk, and the like. So just a brief update of where we're at. July 1st, we had the legal department update our release and hold harmless language to include local and state orders and regulations. We received direction from council on August 3rd that we would no longer be reviewing or processing community event applications that take place in the public right-of-way. March 1st, our office received from the North Central Idaho Public Health District that large gathering plans were required for events and venues with greater than 50 individuals. As you know, we're in stage 3, which allows for gatherings of 50 or less individuals. Not included on this timeline, we recently had the legal department review our release and hold harmless again for this year, which it's not updated in your packet, but it has been updated for this year to remove any 2020 language. And that's been great. So types of events that we're starting to see come through our office, whether that's email requests or phone calls. Kappa Alpha Theta is looking to host an event which is on a street that is managed by the city and not U of I, so they are putting forward an application. We also have the Moscow Farmers Market, which has an application in the wings, so to speak. And then we also have Moscow Ren Fair, who approached us about wanting to manage their event a little bit better than what's been in years past with COVID, due to COVID. As you know, it typically takes place in East City Park, but many access points from East City Park. So they reached out to us, wanted to know what options were available, and have been in active discussion with Arlene Falcon and some other Moscow Ren Fair folks, and Arlene's in the audience tonight, and she's been really great, very communicative with her application, and it's just sitting on my desk waiting to kind of hear the outcome of this meeting. So the action before you this evening is to reinstate the community events application review process and require that events with 50 or more individuals include an approved large gathering plan and attestation from the Public Health District.
Well, Amanda, it's exciting to kind of see we're inching along forward, folks, and we're getting back a little bit closer to normalcy. So it's kind of exciting to hear about the Ren Fair and what they're doing. So I'm personally, as the mayor, is excited to see some things going on. That's exciting news. Questions for Amanda? Sandra?
So I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. We have a couple sites around town where you could actually have 2 events in the same place. Is it first come, first serve, or is it 50 for this event and 50 for this event if you're like spreading out?
I might need a little bit more clarification.
Sure.
On
Let's
that.
say we're at East City Park. It's a pretty big spot, right? Let's say that a group wants to have some sort of event there, and they can have up to 50 in half of that park. What if another event on the other half of that park is there with another 50? Is that allowable, or do you have a process?
So because community events works closely with Parks and Rec very often, and I would say we work most closely with them when there's typically a march or a demonstration happening from maybe Friendship Square to East City Park. The Parks and Recreation Department has its own reservation process, and I see Jen just sort of buzzed in, and she might be able to speak a little bit more to the Parks and Recreation Department side, but that they have their own reservation process as how that works. Jen, I don't know if you want to add more clarity to that.
Welcome, Jen.
Hello. I was just going to make a note that the Parks and Recreation Department has looked at that outdoor space and limiting number of people in accordance with the council's direction, state orders, public health, and whatnot. So with the update from tonight, whatever council's direction may be, we'll also use that to inform the parks process and reservations as well. And we do use that that multi-departmental cooperation to make sure, even if it weren't for COVID, if we had 2 major events going on and all of a sudden we've got 2 major intersections blocked within at East City Park, some of those types of things. So we coordinate those types of issues all the time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
I have a question.
Brandy.
So then if the event is going to be fewer than 50 people, it would just go back to the usual process?
Usual review process. So they would submit a completed application, a site map. If there was a noise permit issue involved, we'd ask them to submit that as well. If insurance is required as part of the event, and then we send it off. We're sort of the first stopping point, make sure we have all the pieces, and then we send it off to the different reviewers.
So the only thing really that is different is the question here is bring this back with the change that if it's more than 50 people, they are required to fill out the attestation form.
To have an approved attestation,
Okay.
yeah.
And that's approved by the health department? Or?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
so they sent us, they know that we deal with farmers market, and that, this is a new process, so we never dealt with this last year. And so we've submitted on behalf of the Moscow Farmers Market, the large gathering plan that we have for market. They review it and then approve it, send us back the approved form.
Great. Gina.
So I have a follow-up question to the two big events in one spot question. I don't know if maybe I stopped paying attention or if I just missed the answer. What is the answer?
To Sandra's question that she
Yes.
had earlier.
What do we do when there's two competing,
I think in a normal year, if COVID wasn't an issue and we got 5 community event applications that came through, it's really, so we have fire, we have police, everyone looking at those things.
Right.
And it's up to them to decide, do we have enough resources to cover these events? So it technically, first come, first served basis. If you're really on top of it and you get your stuff in, but maybe you're the 5th event coming in for that specific day, we could say, I'm sorry, but we just feel like we don't have the resources to cover. That typically hasn't ever happened, even in a non-COVID year. So I don't know if we would anticipate that even for a COVID year.
So to the point that Jen had made earlier, you may have 2 events going on, but they may take up a couple of different intersections, and we don't have enough policing staff to be able to do it at the same moment in time. So that would be a consideration that would be taken in.
Right
Jen.
on. Okay, thank you.
I want to jump into
I'll
and
come
say,
to you next.
if you're talking East City Park with 2 groups of 50 people, is there enough room in the park to allow for the 2 groups to have a simultaneous event?
Jen should answer this because I do not.
Honestly, I don't know that that's happened with 2 different events of 50 people at the same time, COVID or non-COVID. We can go back and look at reservations, but if we typically, our best approach and what we've always done is if we can make it work, we'll absolutely make it work. When we can't make it work, then we go back to the event organizers and say, okay, here's what we can or can't do. Let's work together to figure out how we can make it a success.
Right.
So honestly, I don't think we've ever had 2 events at the same time in East City Park.
Yeah, I was just wondering about space. And so that was kind of the nexus of my question.
I think Greg may have a
Greg,
comment
come on
about
up here.
that.
Perfect.
I see him flossing, and Greg Morrison's with us. He's back there in his chair, moving around. So Greg, welcome.
Thank you. In the past, once we have a reservation on East City Park, we close it to other people. So once that happens, if somebody else wants to have one, they're going to have it somewhere else.
There you
Very
go.
good. That solves
That's
it.
it.
Thank you for that quick, brief answer, and it took care of things. Ann had a question, so I'm going to go to Ann next.
I'm just rereading the large events portion of the Stage 3 plan, and I just wanted to make sure that I understood correctly. So if someone submits an application to us, then they can submit just one that meets the requirement to confirm with the public health district, because we'll communicate with them as part of that event application?
I don't think that is correct.
No, okay.
Yeah, so if they know, like prior to submitting their community event application, the city community event application, that their event is going to be more than 50 people, they know about the attestation, they should move forward, have that approved, and then they can submit it with as like supporting documentation with their community event application. If we were to receive a community event application, look and see it's going to be more than 50 people, we would communicate with you if you were submitting it and say, this is going to be more than 50 people. We require that you have an approved attestation from the public health department. Once you have that, submit it to us. The public health department is not necessarily saying, oh, okay, this person recently submitted this and here it is. So we're working directly with the applicant.
Gotcha. And so the sequencing is that we wouldn't process their application if they hadn't received that confirmation. Okay, thank you.
Very good. Okay. Gina?
Well, hearing no more questions or not seeing anybody raise their hands, I move that we recommend the reinstatement of the community events application review process and require that events with 50 or more individuals also include an approved large gathering plan and attestation from the Public Health Idaho North Central District.
Second.
Such a long title.
I'm gonna give that to Maureen. She didn't say it, but she got her hand up first. That's what I'm
We're doing
guessing.
hands now, we're
Well,
not talking? So
Maureen,
I
you
think we know
guessed.
the rules.
I'm guessing that was a second?
Yeah, that's a second.
Okay.
Being on
You
Zoom.
came in a
Put your
close.
hand up.
All right.
Okay, we've got a motion by Gina and a second by Maureen to recommend the reinstatement of the community events application review process and require that events with 50 or more individuals also include an approved large gathering plan attest station from the Public Health Idaho North Central District. And I will start the roll.
Can I have another discussion.
Okay?
Okay, so here's my question. We talked about this a little bit at the committee meeting. Is there, or can the city consider when one of these comes through that is going to be in a public place that's more than 50 people that requires this attestation, that there be some structured plan for trying to make that known as much as possible to the public, to give people who may want to avoid that area
Sure.
for reasons,
Yeah,
a little more notice that this event is happening.
Yeah, so I would say that's something that with social media, we can certainly use that coming from the community events division. And then there was a small group of folks for downtown closures, business owners and the like, and that was something that we were utilizing, a Facebook group to let people know when those types of things were coming up. But I think we can certainly put social media to good use in that regard. I don't know. I would encourage, of course, the hosting organization to issue any press releases on their own time. But I don't see why we couldn't make that as part of our efforts in reinstating this while COVID remains an issue.
Yeah.
Could we send that out as a press release, just so people know?
I mean, if you want staff time drawing up press releases on behalf of community organizations, I would refer to Jen on that. So for instance, that would mean that, we would be issuing a press release that the Moscow Ren Fair is happening downtown. I would encourage the organization to do that.
The organization should do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about on our, the landing page of our website that has some of the little announcements at the bottom? I mean, I think I am in support of resuming these things, but I also know from some past experience that the surprises are not good when it comes to these large gatherings.
I mean, and Jen, if you want to jump in here, but
Yeah, I would.
I think we can also utilize the city calendar. That's something that we have a community events section under the city calendar that we could easily utilize that. But Jen, if you want to speak
And
to
even
that.
if it's just, even if we just know that if someone asks, you can say, oh, if you ever want to know what these events coming up, here's where you go to find it. Whether it's the Facebook or something, but just something very clearly defined that can be consistent and relied upon.
Jen, you want to take comment?
Yeah,
on
and
it?
I think for a calendar situation, if they're actually getting a permit, we can absolutely put those out there. The ones that become a little bit more tricky is the events that don't necessarily come in for a permit.
Right.
We do try to track those down ahead of time. Those are the ones that are sometimes a surprise to us as well. I think we're pretty good about staying ahead of most of those. I would say that our social media is going to be by and far the best way to get the news out to the most people in the quickest amount of time. We can certainly send a press release. We find that reaches far fewer people than social media. It's something that I think if the event organizers, if you're putting together something that's 50 or more people, they'll already be sending out that information, which is great. And then that Facebook group in particular, it's a downtown Facebook group. So if it's something that's happening on Main Street, we let the business owners in that area know of street closures that are coming up, including Smart Transit and some of those others. So I would say, honestly, social media is going to be our best way to get the word out on that one. Again, we can put those permitted events on a calendar, but it's not going to catch all events. And that's always tricky because why didn't you have this one, or why isn't my event listed on there, or something like that. So we can definitely work with that some more though and see what other things we can come up with.
I would also just add that when we do have applications come through, they're reviewed and they're approved, we have a small notifications list that typically includes Smart Transit, some folks with the county, some folks at U of I, people that are usually dealing in these public right-of-ways, to make them aware that this event has been approved and permitted, in case they have any questions or come across it. So it does get out into the community, usually with a smaller constituency, but we can definitely make efforts to let the general broader public know as well.
Okay, do I need to reread the motion? We do have one on the floor. Everybody understands the motion? Gina made it, and Maureen second. I'll start the roll with Brandy.
Aye.
Maureen.
Aye.
Ann.
Aye.
Art.
Aye.
Sandra and Gina.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Wonderful report on that. Thank you. And so Amanda's got item number 9, Moscow Farmers Market Operation Proposal. Amanda, you have the floor on this one as well.
Great. Okay, so another item before y'all this evening is what we're hoping for market to look like this season. So again, this was some repeat for the folks that were at the administrative committee meeting, and then maybe a better visual of what I was trying to illustrate. So 2020 recap. Local emergency proclamation, limited gatherings of 50 people or more on March 13th. March 25th, all farmers markets in the state of Idaho were deemed by Governor Little's office to be essential, which was great for us. We decided to offer the first motor in Moscow Farmers Market, piloting that with just agricultural goods, and then opening it up to all types of vendors on May 16th. And then we had the delayed start date, June 6th, downtown, just to give us time to work out our plan, get those communications out to the public, and still had a gradual reopening to all vendor types and customer attendance by the end of June. We had no live market entertainment last year, no youth programming, no outreach. You heard earlier from the Fair and Affordable Housing Commission that we are hoping to bring City Commission tabling back, as well as some other tabling efforts. No youth vendors or performance vendors, also known as buskers. So recommendations for this year are based on the ability for staff to manage these amenities and programs. Many of them, such as allowing youth vendors to return, would be held to the same standards as our adult vendors. And some of them we just feel like we still don't have a good handle on or would be able to control very readily, such as performance vendors. So we're recommending to continue that program suspension, just because buskers inherently get people close nearby, form large groups and circles, and we just don't have the staff capacity or time to be managing those items. And we do feel confident about being able to have live market entertainment return in a modified capacity. And I would just like to illustrate what that could look like, and what we would be focusing on if live entertainment were able to return. So what we have, I worked with engineering. This is Friendship Square. These yellow barricades, each segment represents an 8-foot barricade. We realize we obviously need to make an opening for staff and musicians to access this area, so these 2 corner barricades would likely not be present, or maybe just one cut off at a diagonal. Just to give some landing marks, here's the downtown Friendship Square posting kiosk. This is the bus shelter. This is where we have the city info tent, and then the backyard harvest tent over here. Right here, right, is the corner of Bloom. And then this grade structure right here is the playground area. And then we have a small parking bench. And that parking bench is usually utilized by bands and musicians. Normally we'll have 2 10-by-10 tents just in front of the bench. So this isn't necessarily the exact placing of the barricades, just an approximate estimation. And so I just wanted to kind of illustrate how much space there still is here for pedestrians to walk and sort of move about, and we would still not be putting out chairs. And chairs typically run from this very faint, I don't know if folks can see this, line right here to about, probably about like 10, 15 feet back, depending on how many rows we do and how spaced apart they are. But this is just the idea of musicians would be inside the barricades here, and no chairs would be deployed. So just a better visualization from the March 22nd meeting when I presented. So the recommendations or the action items before you are have live market entertainment return on May 1st. If that were to happen, per council, there would be no reduction in vendor fees. The other option before you is have it return on July 3rd. With that happening 2 months into market, the recommendation from staff would be to waive the vendor registration fees, or of course take any other action that you deem appropriate.
Okay, questions for Amanda? Who wants to go first? Gina?
I recognize the not so awesome nature of this question.
Okay.
So regarding the live entertainment, and so there was a lot of rumor and innuendo going around earlier in the process of learning about COVID, in that singing is far more virulent. Tell me how you landed on 8-foot barriers and how much space is between the bands potentially and the people who will stand in front of those barriers. Talk to me about that, please.
So we looked at, I believe it was from the Public Health Department in Baltimore was the only place that I could find that information last year. And they estimated that projection, right, unmasked, can still, I think, be anywhere from 15 to 20 feet.
Yeah.
So we would obviously have to measure out the bands and where they would be located in the barricade section. And then, of course, you are a singer, I know, and so we would encourage singers to wear masks. We understand that inhibits folks from singing, and if they didn't want to wear masks, then we would have to place them just so. So the 8-foot barricades are more of a function of what we have on hand out at the streets department. But as far as the spacing between there, we kind of use the guidance from what we were able to find at the time from the East Coast area.
Can I have a follow-up?
Yep.
So do I understand that you would actually then potentially recommend to bands where to place their singers?
Yes.
Is that what you said? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
and in the contingency plans that you all have before you, one of the additional safety measures we talk about is, one, prioritizing smaller acts so we can promote that distancing. And then, of course, if they want to be closer, requirement of mask wearing. If they're able to be spread further apart, not requiring the mask wearing. But yes, I think it would be on us to be screening all the acts, figuring out, can we accommodate them, and can we accommodate them with the public safely? Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, did you get, relative to the timing of the two options that staff proposes, did you get any feedback from the market vendors about which they are like more than another?
No, the feedback we got last year was just more on the fact that they would like to have music back. They did even comment that canned music, an iPod or, Spotify or something like that would help. But I do know that live music has the ability to impact some vendors more so than others. So generally speaking, we know we'll have an at-risk shopping hour from 8 to 9, and then 8 to 10, you usually have the people who just want to come to the market and get out, go home. And then as the day progresses, that's when we see more people come out. And so the 10:30 to 12:30 time slot would have the potential to make market a very lively atmosphere or more of a subdued atmosphere that we experienced last year. But the vendors themselves did not have any specific timing on when they would like to see live entertainment return.
So, and no preference relative to the May 1st versus,
Yeah, I think the only preference would be if it saves them a little bit of money, then, go for the July 3rd one, but that's dependent on each vendor.
Well, I guess it's untested how lively it would be with the canned music, because that hasn't happened. There was nothing last year.
Yeah, there was nothing
So-
last year.
Right. Yeah. I don't suppose we will find out from all the vendors. There's just not the time to do that, but what the trade-off of the reduced fees and still having music perhaps would be a good option for them. I think too, with the following up on Gina's comment, I mean, it just seems to get very tricky with the distancing and everything and placement of the performers, because it says they don't have to wear their face covering if they're more than 6 feet apart from each other and not facing each other, but that means they're facing out and they're closer to the barriers. So the farther apart they are, the closer they are to.
Seems to me that, I mean, it's been a long time since I've been in a band, but I remember it. And you're in a bubble. You've been practicing already. I mean, it's like that little pod anyway. I don't know why you need your band separated out 6 feet, because they've already been spending a lot of time together, right? So according to all the information we've been given, it's their bubble of pods, right? They're a pod of people, so I don't know why we have to worry about the band being 6 feet apart from each other. They've already made that decision. So, I mean, I think that's one thing we could take out, is not have to worry about where the band is, because they've already been working together.
Okay.
so I was thinking too that relative to the two dates and questions, I'm thinking as we get closer to June, there'll be more inoculations in people's arms, and that should help subdue things a bit, whereas May, we're still working our way up the inoculation ramp of percentages of people who are fully immunized. So I'm thinking just from in terms of vaccination rates and things like that, the June date might be better just to have more people out there.
July.
July 3rd. July. Yeah. Or if you wanted, I mean, if council wanted to propose a June date, that's also acceptable.
Maureen.
Well, actually, I do think a June date sounds like a good idea. July seems pretty late, but I also think that it's an enormous amount of work when we have live music there for you and your staff. And I just want to applaud you for being willing to take that task on. My one concern about pods is whether or not there's an example, in part, because when you have everybody clustered together, people then may watch it and think I should be clustered too, and not think, oh, those are pods and we're not. So anyways, I think sometimes it gets complicated in terms of what people see, and then what they should do is different.
Gina.
I think as much as I love the live music, I think the July 3rd is my inclination, in that I fully resonate with the idea of the vaccinations are going to be higher amounts, and I think that we will potentially move towards a healthier environment as well. I hear what Sandra is saying about the pods. It's totally true. I share germs once a week with my pod of band members, but I will tell you what, if I can see somebody that I know in the audience and I don't have my mask on, I'm going to be tempted every time to run over and talk or sing to somebody and so I agree with everyone about the complication of it. So I really believe that the July 3rd date is what we need to go with. Now, whether or not we waive fees, that's another story altogether. But I absolutely think that July 3rd at the earliest is what we ought to do.
Make a motion out of that.
I will do that, sir. I move that we recommend approval of hosting live market entertainment return on July 3rd with a waiver and vendor registration fees.
Seconded.
All right, okay, for
Can I ask one question real quick?
Sure.
What if everything looks really great and maybe we want to move it to June, do we still have the ability to do that? If Amanda comes through and says, hey, look at all of our numbers, look at all the vaccination numbers, things are great. Can we come to June? I don't have my Saturday, June dates in
I
front of
don't
me.
know
but-
why not.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
That's
think
fine.
if that's something that, Jen, do you want to jump in here? I can see you.
Yeah, just a couple of notes. One, booking bands in advance is tricky.
Yeah, that's true.
We need to have the lead up time to actually get acts and get people who are available on those dates to commit. The other part I wanted to mention is that the market's gone through that attestation process with public health. Amanda mentioned this in her first presentation. I think she mentioned it again here. So these, I think both concepts, remind me here, correct me if I'm wrong, Amanda, have been vetted through public health and were approved as they were outlined as well. So finding that middle date is definitely doable. It's just finding bands that are available on that short notice creates a
valid point on
we're
that.
used to providing music. It's something we've done. We just didn't do it last year. So that's something we can ramp up. We just have to give the bands time to do that as well.
Right.
Well, okay, Gina made a motion and Art seconded to have the market entertainment return on July 3rd with a waiver in vendor registration fees. Everybody good with that?
Yeah, and would you also plan to have the canned music up until then?
Yes, we would probably play the market iPod until then, until 10, until
I wish there was a better term for it.
Yeah,
There's no
I mean-
getting around it.
yeah.
Still, it's playlist. Having music is great, even if it's recorded,
Yeah.
Okay,
right?
we'll go with that. We'll start with Ann,
Aye.
Maureen,
Aye.
Brandy,
Aye.
Art,
Aye.
Sandra,
Aye.
and Gina.
Aye.
Okay, you have a date. Thank you very much for
All
both
right.
those reports
Thank
that you did in the resolution. Thank you, Amanda. So with that, we will move on to item number 10, Hamilton Law Aquatic Center proposal. We've got Greg Morrison with us this evening. So Greg, come on up. He has been just anxious to jump in here and tell us about the pool this year.
Okay, I got to get this set up, so I'm not exactly sure if I'm going to do this right or not.
Well, we'll send Lori over if you need some help with it.
I have to share something.
Lori, go over and give Greg.
I think I got
a
it.
hand. Oh, he's
Maybe.
got it.
That's what you do.
Whoops. I guess is where I'm going to start anyhow. Well, thank you for seeing me today. Talked about opening the HLAC this year. And after a lot of different options that have ran through my mind, and after speaking with a lot of people, even the Parks and Recreation Commission, I had an option then, but we've gone away from that as well. I had a long conversation with Carol Murley, whose name I'm sure has already been brought up a couple times today. Speaking with her and the chance to get a large gathering plan and attestation, the same as Amanda has done, it's probably the way that we want to go. I feel very confident in this option. We implement appropriate health and safety measures. Parks and Rec proposed the Hamilton Low Aquatic Center open for the full season, starting June 11. We will go 12 weeks, and our last event will be the dog swim, we believe on 12th of September. Best part about it is that I believe that we can manage to have the facility open to everybody that wants to use it. I was following the recommendation of Public Health. They're talking with her and Lance Abendroth from the high school. By what they have to go by through Idaho, IHSAA, Idaho High School Athletic Association. We went by the same rules that they have to follow, and that is a 40% of total occupation within the HLAC. Right now, the total occupation is 900 people, so that would allow us 360 people within the facility. We average 310 people on a June day. Any June day, we average around 310, some a little more on the weekends, a little less during the week. But I don't think that we will be going over our 360 at any given time. Of course, those numbers will increase as it gets hotter out, but I believe that we can meet the needs of the people of Moscow. We will have to get a large gathering plan and attestation and have that signed by the health department. And Carol said, if you send it to me now, I'll sign it. So I know that she is approving this highly. So if I get the right one here. Okay, so our admission policy, we would have one ingress, one egress. That means people are only passing one way and people are not passing them the other way, staying 6 feet apart. We have two really nice entrances and exits that we will be using. Ticket booth people will be asking people as they come in how they're feeling, if they have a fever, if they're not feeling well. If any of those answers is yes, we will have them turn away, just for the safety of everybody involved, including the people going in. We will continue with the entry fees. I don't have any recommendation for changing the fees. The fees that are listed here are what we've charged not last year, but the year prior, so we're not increasing any. Last year we were just at lap swim, and I think we were charging $4 a day for the person to come in. So we would go back to a regular fee. We would also offer season passes. After talking with different people, some with large families, some with small families, we felt that we could give people what they were looking for with a pass. However, we would have a piece of paper for them to give them to let them know that there would be a caveat. If we were full for the day at 360 people, we may have to turn them away. I felt that this was probably the best option, that we're getting the information out prior to them leaving our facility, after they're getting their pass. So are we going to hear it? Probably from a couple people, but I think that we will be doing our due diligence to get them the information before they bought their pass. Staffing, we would fully staff from top to bottom for lifeguards and concessions, along with a safety team. I'll get into the safety team here in a second. I know in the last year we ended up going to a skeleton crew. We believe that we can rehire, we meaning my managers and I, we think that we can rehire and fulfill a full summer of lifeguards. So they would be able to work, they will count on the hours to work. We won't have to go back and try and figure something else out. I believe that we can make sure that we are meeting those needs for our staff. We will also be hiring a full crew of concessions. Concession workers, just like any other gear, are required to wear face guards and gloves. So they'll have those at all times. The pools will be open, all the pools will be open, including the slides. We will have, on the lap pool, we'll have distance dots for those kids that want to get on the diving board. We'll also have distance dots for those kids that want to go down the slides. After talking with Carol in the activity pool about sanitizing and making sure that we're good with our blow up inner tubes, she said that the chlorine will take care of any type of sanitation that we require. She has no qualms about us using those. We would, however, not have the blow-up obstacle course. That doesn't get wet enough. Kids are on top of it. We just don't think that it is a safe option at this time. If, for example, in mid-July, we find out from the health district that everybody is inoculated, then we can obviously change those options. Go back a little bit, if we find again that public health has said we're wide open again, we can always change the limits of 360 in the facility. We can always jump it up. But I think that staying safe at 360 right for now and the beginning is the proper way to go about it. So the deck indicate physical distances with chairs and groupings of chairs. So as people come in the facility, we will already have the chairs located in pods, if you will, family pods. And we will encourage people to go ahead and take those chairs. If larger families can take here, smaller families can be there. We will require masks if they are not on their way to the pool, on their way back from the pool, or in the pool. Obviously, if somebody's 6 feet away from each other, we won't bother them in that, but if it comes to a problem and kids tend to not listen quite as well, we'll have our safety team on top of that as well. Safety team will be sanitizing the whole day. After somebody uses the picnic area, as soon as they're done, we'll have a safety team cleaning that up before somebody else can get on it. After people are done with the chairs, we'll be washing the chairs off and making sure that, and I can't remember the name of the spray that we ought to, wishy-wash or something along that line. But we'll be doing that before the next group comes to use it. We'll be doing that throughout the day. Restrooms will be open. Showers will not. We can't keep people away from each other in a closed gang shower type atmosphere. So we are encouraging people to come ready to swim. Our restrooms will be open. I think it's a safe issue because we won't have to close any of the restroom facility because we have barriers between each facility. So I think it's a safe, again, we'll be cleaning that touch points every 15 minutes, if not more, depending on use, of course. Let's see. Concessions, again, following regular health department guidelines. We will have one ingress, one ingress to let people in and out. We'll basically have arrows to show people where to come in, where to go out. Eating spaces are sanitized. We will have swimming lessons. Again, it goes back to when the swim instructors with the younger kids, they will be in the water with them, but the chlorinated water is a safety issue, or a safety for our instructors. So we believe that swimming lessons will be 100% as well. As we get into the plunge pool with swimming lessons, the instructor is more on the deck, so they're keeping their distance as well. Our safety team, we went over that. We're going to do the whole facility every 2 hours if possible. But I'll tell you, we will be hitting it a lot more than every 2 hours. Especially beginning, we want to make sure people feel good about coming in and safe. And I know that my team will be able to get that handled. While the patrons are in the facility, we'll also be cleaning touch points and surfaces every 15 minutes at least. If the higher touch areas, we'll be cleaning more often. We will have hand sanitizing stations everywhere. People can use it whenever they want. They shouldn't have to travel more than 10 or 15 feet to find a hand sanitizing station. At the end of the day, both lifeguards and cleaning areas and concession will all jump on the whole facility, clean it top to bottom before anybody goes home. So bright and early on the next day, whenever we open, we'll be ready to go. Let's see. We'll also make sure that we are cleaning the tops of the slides, the stairs to the slides, and the handrails at least every 15 minutes, if not more. Okay, I went over that really fast. I apologize for that. But the big thing is I want to thank you and the community for their patience and understanding as we all work together to navigate the unprecedented times of 2020. We look forward to seeing everyone at the pool to enjoy a summer of sunshine and swimming.
Art, you had a question.
Yeah, is there going to be any kind of requirement for vaccination status for staff and lifeguards?
No, we won't have, there, at this time, most of our lifeguard, well, I won't say, half of our lifeguards may not be old enough to get, is it 16 and older? We do have some 15-year-olds, and our concession workers typically are 15. So, no, but they will be, lifeguards will have masks only when they are going from station to station. While they're on chair, they will not have face masks for obvious reasons. But when they go to their next, wherever they're going next, to the next spot as they rotate, we will require them to put masks on. I feel as if I can make sure that we keep people 6 feet away from them. We have talked about putting cones out, keep people away as far as possible so they feel safe as well.
We got Jen, I see she came on. Jen, did you want to add anything to that?
Just a quick note from an HR perspective, requirements for vaccinations are not something that we've approached at this time, especially as we get into an area where everyone may be eligible for a vaccine, but if they choose not to get that vaccine. So we have not had that requirement. And I believe with the timing of the pool opening, and what I understand state of Idaho is going through, most of our potential lifeguard candidates, concessionaires, all of those types of seasonal employees should start to be eligible for those vaccines as well. So they'll have the opportunity, I believe, to get that, but we have not required that for seasonals or any other employees either, so.
Thanks, Jen. Maureen?
I think that you'll probably get grief about the mask, but I want to say that it's very consistent with what the U of I did, and last year people were really clear about enforcing that, and I think it worked okay. But I do think it's something, I thought, how's that going to work at the university? And it works incredibly well. People get out, they put their mask on, they walk back to the locker room, and I applaud you for taking this, making this step.
I appreciate that. And you're right, if this was last year, I probably would have gotten hanged, but if this year, without, people are used to this, I think we will get less pushback. I mean, we'll still get some pushback, but I believe that people are used to it, they know the expectations, and I think that we can be consistent with it.
And my own experience is that I find people who go to the pools get nervous until they go there and they realize, wait a minute, it's perfectly safe. And so I applaud you for taking this step.
Thank you.
Gina?
Greg, this is an awesome plan. This is really well thought out. And I love the safety team idea. It's not a manager of the pool walking around with a stick, or anything like that. I just really have to say, I appreciate what you've brought forward.
Thank you.
Awesome. It's so optimistic, too. I don't want to be the people cleaning up at the end of the day, because that's a long list, and that, how those minutes tick by. But what a very good way to bring some of the things that we hold dear back to us in light of all of the stuff we get to deal with. So thank you. Thank you for that, and really nice job.
Thank you.
Completely agree. I was going to ask about the bathrooms since that was a big point of discussion last year, but you covered that and any other question I could have had. And your very comprehensive plan, and I really appreciate all the work that went into that. It really shows.
Thank you.
Art?
Well, I'd make a motion to approve staff's recommendation to open the Hamilton Low Aquatic Center on June 11th, 2021, and the regularly scheduled 2021 9-week season with additional COVID protocols as
Second.
proposed.
Sorry, I cut you off at the end there. Second?
Okay. Art made a motion, Ed made a second to approve the staff's recommendation to open the Hamilton Low Aquatic Center on June the 11th, 2021 for the regular scheduled 2021 9-week season with additional COVID protocol. And I'll start the roll with Gina.
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
Art.
Aye.
Brandy.
Aye.
Maureen.
Aye.
Ann.
Aye.
Hallelujah, we got a pool this year. Good job, very nice presentation, Greg, wonderful. Thank you, Jan. Okay, with that, we are gonna move on to item number 11, which is residential street standards update proposal. We've got Bill Belknap with us. Bill, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing well, Your Honor. I hope everybody's doing well this evening. Let me bring up my presentation here and I'll do a screen share.
Okay.
Hopefully you can see my screen.
Your voice is a little softer today than usual.
I'll try to move up a little closer to the computer.
Thank you.
Can you see my presentation?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So for a little bit of background on this particular topic, the city has adopted established roadway construction standards for the construction of public and private streets within the city based upon a roadway's classifications, whether it is a local residential street, a collector street, a minor arterial, an alley, or a pathway system. We have standards that have been adopted in the city's construction standards and specifications. The city currently has 2 local, which are really our general residential streets that are, not those streets that carry high volumes. You're typically 25-mile-an-hour roadways with less than 1,500 vehicles per day, typically. We'd have 2 standards for those classifications of streets. One includes a 36-foot wide standard that includes parking on both sides. And we also have a 28-foot standard that allows parking on one side of the street. During the most recent street standards update that occurred in 2014, at that time we had a 34-foot wide street that allowed parking on both sides, and that was increased to 36 feet in width. And the 28-foot standard was limited in use to cul-de-sacs and short, unextendable street locations. Planning and Zoning Commission, over the course of the last year, has been working on a number of updates to the city subdivision code and standards with the goal of providing greater flexibility in new developments, really kind of trying to facilitate things that we see typically in planned unit development, but really codifying that and allowing that to be implemented a little bit more easily in new developments. Through that process, the commission expressed the desire to allow the use of the 28-foot street standard that they felt would be more consistent with the traditional neighborhood format. I'll talk about here a little bit more detail, as well as clustered neighborhood design. And so they put a request to staff and to the city council to consider widening the allowance of the 28-foot standard that was limited in that 2014 update. And the 28-foot standard, as I mentioned, is not a new standard. We have had it in the city's street standards for now about 20 years, and we do have a number of roadways. 6th Street located east of Mountain View is one example of the 28-foot standards. We do have it in many neighborhoods that have been developed over the last several decades in the community. So these are 2 standards, as I mentioned before. This is the 36-foot wide standard that has 2 10-foot travel lanes that occupy 20 feet of the roadway section. Then we have on-street parking on both sides with 8 feet in width. That makes up the remaining 16 feet of the road section. So we end up with that 36-foot wide street section. We also have 8-foot tree lawns and minimum of 5-foot wide sidewalks on both sides of the street. The 28-foot standard then has, again, our 2 10-foot travel lanes for 20 feet of that roadway section, and then parking on one side occupying 8 feet for the combined width of 28 feet in the roadway. And again, tree lawns here, because they both use the same right-of-way width of 60 feet, actually grow a little bit to be up to 10 feet. Again, with that 5-foot setback on both, or 5-foot sidewalk, on both sides of the street. The change that actually happened to this standard in 2015 was the addition of this footnote that I'll expand here on the next slide. So again, that footnote that was added in the 14 update stated that the use of this street standard will be limited to cul-de-sacs and 1 to 2 block unextendable streets. And so that was really the change. And there was kind of a view within the engineering department at that time of trying to encourage larger and wider street standards and to really reduce or limit the use of the 28-foot wide street standard. As I mentioned, the Planning and Zoning Commission is working on a couple of different updates and development options underneath the city subdivision code. One that has been titled the traditional subdivision developments is what you would maybe see more in the Fort Russell district, where it's a grid street system with rear alley access. Lots would tend to be maybe somewhat narrower in width, but be fairly deep with the goal of having garage access to the rear. The clustered option would then be where we would shift from maybe slightly smaller lot sizes that allows preservation of sensitive areas that may exist on a property, whether those could be floodplains or steeply sloped areas. But again, trying to encourage smaller lot sizes, clustered development, and preservation of open space areas. And then the final development option would just be conventional, and that would just utilize the base zoning standards within that zoning district. So both within the traditional and clustered option to try to encourage and incentivize that development. Lot sizes would be reduced slightly, open space requirements would be increased, but with the overall goal of potentially allowing the developer to have a little bit higher lot yield by a couple lots in that situation, but again, trying to help facilitate more creative and compact development. As I mentioned, the commission felt that both traditional and clustered and certainly conventional would benefit from greater use of the 28-foot street standard. And they were requesting removal of that limitation on the use of that street. Beyond just the planning aspects of our planning zoning commission and subdivision development, there are a number of benefits to the community as a whole for the maintenance and operations of the roadways. Every time a street is constructed and dedicated and accepted by the city, then we inherit the future liability for maintenance and replacement of that road when it reaches its end of life. Narrow roadways also help provide traffic calming and help reduce neighborhood traffic speeds, which we would hope would in turn reduce future demand for traffic calming treatments in neighborhoods. Allowing on-street parking on only one side also benefits operations with respect to snow removal. Where you have parking on both sides and vehicles are parked on the street, you end up with berms being placed between the travel lanes and those parked vehicles. Where we have parking only on one side, it allows a cleaner operation for snow removal activities to be able to push it clearly to the curb on one side and into that tree lawn for storage without having to maneuver around parked vehicles on both sides of the street. We did request input from the operations division, and again, they provided a sample of the potential life cycle savings on a roadway comparing, again, a 36-foot wide street to a 28-foot wide street. And you can see over the life of that roadway, they estimated that have 3 slurry seal treatments, potentially 1 AR chip seal treatment, a grind and inlay, and then finally a reconstruction at the end of the life of that roadway. And for a mile of roadway, comparing those two sides, shifting to a 28-foot wide roadway would reduce, save just about $500,000 over the life of that roadway, really 22% savings. And there are also additional operational savings for snow removal, and that was estimated at $14,000 over the life of that road. The city also recently funded a regional housing assessment study, and housing affordability has become a significant concern within the community. Again, allowing for that narrow roadway would help reduce those required public improvements to develop and provide access to new lots and subdivisions. Commonly, we see those improvements run $35,000 to $55,000 per home or per lot in a subdivision. And again, reducing that roadway width from 36 feet to 28 feet could also have corollary benefits to reducing housing costs within the community as well. There are a number of also environmental benefits. Reduced stormwater runoff from less impervious areas would be certainly a very clear one. Reducing that heat island effect due to reduced asphalt surface areas, reducing the environmental impacts from just the construction input materials of base rock and asphalt paving. And then again, reducing that material demand in future maintenance activities, those grinding inlays, slurry seals, and other activities that be happening in the future. And it does slightly reduce that land necessary for public rights of way. The proposed changes would be actually very, very simple. So we would relabel the 28-foot local street standard as our local street standard, and the 36-foot standard would then become the alternate. So currently in the standards, the 36-foot standard is labeled as our local street standard, and the 28-foot is the alternate. So we'd just be flipping the designations of those two roadways. It would just require us to remove that footnote from that 28-foot street standard that limits its application. So again, there is the updates that are in your packets do have an updated footnote. Again, it just states the street section will be used as the minimum standard for all streets not classified as a collector or arterial, or under conditions in which the standard drawing for alternate local street is not used. And so essentially that would become our preferred local street standard as a 28-foot section. And then our 36-foot standard would become our new alternate local street. And there may be situations where there's anticipation based on the design of a neighborhood or the uses where they may be a higher demand for on-street parking in a particular location. And again, that standard would still be available. It just would be, we would be promoting the 28-foot standard as our preferred street standard. The Planning and Zoning Commission obviously initiated this request for consideration and is in support of the change. Both operations and engineering staff have reviewed the proposal and recommend approval as well. The Transportation Commission reviewed this in October of last year and recommended approval to the City Council. And then this was reviewed by the Public Works Finance Committee at the March 8th meeting here just last month, at which time the committee recommended approval to the council. So staff's recommendation this evening is to approve the proposed amended standard construction drawings and associated resolution, or provide staff with further direction. And that resolution, unfortunately, was omitted from the packet, but was distributed to the council earlier today. So with that, I'll stop my screen share and be happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Bill, this is a good example of two things that come to my mind after reading through this. Is one, thinking out of the box by going to a 28-foot street standard over a number of years, saving $500,000, plus the additional money savings from snow removal, so on and so forth that you talked about. That's number one. The second thing is with the narrowing down a street, traffic will go slower in a neighborhood residential area, which is a big deal because these wider streets, people just simply go faster. And I think for residents, it's a bigger safety issue than for a lot of people. Okay, with that, Art.
Yeah, just one thing. At Public Works and Finance Committee meeting, you gave us an example of what a 28-foot street section looked like, and I think it was helpful for everyone to visualize what that actually looks like. So could you point at a street that everybody sort of knows as with a 28-foot section?
Sure. So the most typical one, like I mentioned in the presentation, is 6th Street, located east of Mountain View. That goes all the way up to the top to the intersection with Panorama Drive, and that's a 28-foot street standard all the way up to that intersection. A Pony Drive, Alturas Drive in Indian Hill 6th Edition are also developed to the 28-foot street standard. So we have a number of those roadway sections within the community.
Thanks.
Good. Maureen.
I think it's an interesting timing because we started this meeting talking about fair and affordable housing. And one of the things that the 28 feet gives us is the ability for more, or encourages more clustered housing. And we may in fact help with the providing more housing for more people.
Gina?
You provided no less than 12 to 15 really good reasons why we should do this. My top two were the 22% savings. I love that idea. Anytime you can save and facilitate higher density, more creative housing solutions and that sort of thing. And then what the mayor said about slowing traffic down, I think this is a very good thing. So can I make a motion?
Can I ask
Absolutely.
a question first?
Thanks.
Before I do. Yep.
Go ahead, Sandra.
So actually, I have two questions for you, Bill. One, out of all those recommendations, did you get any input also from fire and police? Are they in favor of this?
So we did not consult with fire and police on this. The 20-foot standard meets the minimum 20-foot fire lane access standard. So we didn't, I don't know that we actually specifically stated, this has been a standard in the city's street standards for
Sure.
many, many years. And it was never, we didn't receive any opposition from police or fire department. We did in 14 modify the cul-de-sac standard because the International Fire Code did shift to a larger cul-de-sac. So we now have a 96-foot wide cul-de-sac to allow fire apparatus to turn around. But the 20-foot travel lane width has always been adequate for fire access within new developments.
Great. Can I add on my last one?
Okay, go ahead.
And then the other part of that, I should know this, and I don't, I'm a little embarrassed to say, but will those be mile per hour of 25 or 20?
Typically, they're going to be posted at 25.
Thank you.
Now we'll go back to you. Oh,
okay.
Brandy.
So, yeah, I think it's a pretty clearly so many benefits to this. That seems to be an example of, which we see a lot in building where something changes and we think it's the best thing, and then later we find out maybe it wasn't so great, and that's a lot of pavement, 36 feet across, that in a lot of these neighborhoods that we see it, there's not a lot of traffic on them, and it's just expanses of impervious surface affecting stormwater and other issues. So just many, many, many reasons to support this change. The one question I have, since this would be applied to only local residential streets, how do you consider at that time that something new is going in, if that could in the future necessitate turning into a collector or arterial?
So those are typically designated on the city's comprehensive plan and a long-term thoroughfare plan that lays out, and really we only show collectors or arterials in that thoroughfare plan because we are looking at that overall circulation among the city. As individual subdivisions come in, then the interior local streets get filled out with the subdivision layout. So those are already pre-designated on the city's comprehensive plan. And then as a development comes in, then that is a street standard that's applied for that section, whether it's a north-south or an east-west collector. And most all of them that we see, most of our arterials end up being either Mountain View or A streets, so fairly heavy volume roadways. Typically in single-family residential areas where we'll kind of encounter the street standard, it's going to be just collectors, what we'll see on that map. But those are all generally outlined in the city's thoroughfare plan in our comprehensive plan. And so that's what we utilize to make those determinations.
And so would that mean that once something is a 28-foot wide street, it can never become an arterial in the future?
I mean, correct. With new developments, as a subdivision comes in, that thoroughfare plan shows streets out into the 50-year growth horizon. So as that segment of roadway is constructed in a near-term subdivision, we will develop it to what is a 34-foot standard for a collector because it's the travel lanes and then bike lanes with no on-street parking. So 3rd Street's a good example as it goes up through 3rd Street east of Mountain View through the Harvest Hills development and up in the Rolling Hills development. That's designated as a collector. It'll continue, and then we project that it will loop to the north and ultimately connect with Mountain View up near Mountain View Park. That's designated as a collector. As that subdivision came in, that particular roadway was developed to the 34-foot wide standard. And developers there also wanted to have some on-street parking, so they did the optional widening to add on-street parking on one side in certain locations. But that was a standard that was applied at that time. White Avenue is another example. When the Southgate addition came in, we had White Avenue shown projected as a collector as well, and that roadway was constructed to that standard. So as new development occurs, they will build that roadway to that standard. And then really the local streets just provide local access to the lots within a subdivision. Once they're developed to a 28-foot standard, they won't change.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Gina?
Okay, sir. I move that we approve the proposed amended standard construction drawings and associated resolution.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion by Gina and a second by Art to approve the proposed amended standard construction drawings and the associated resolution.
I'm just in the mood to cut people off tonight. Apologies.
With that being said, further discussion. I'll start to roll with Brandy,
Aye.
Maureen,
Aye.
Ann,
Aye.
Gina,
Aye.
Sandra,
Aye.
and Art.
Aye.
Okay, thank you Bill, very much. With that, we're going to move on to item number 12, the setting of the 2022 budget hearing date for August the 2nd, 2021. And we have Gary Reedner that will present.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm proud to present the briefest and most concise agenda item tonight.
We're excited to hear it.
If you want a 20-minute explanation, I'm happy to accommodate you, but every year by April 30th, we need to give notice to Latah County as to when we will have the public hearing on the budget. Traditionally, we have usually set the budget workshops for the second Monday and that week of the second Monday in July, giving staff 3 weeks to go ahead and make any amendments to the draft budget that council desires, get the public notice out, and then have the public hearing on the budget the first meeting in August. that gives us a chance that should the budget be contested among the council and it's not able to be passed on first or second reading under suspension of the rules, that 3 full council meetings can be given over to deal with the budget. So, and then get it to Latah County in time so that the October 1st deadline, or should I say the next succeeding fiscal year, can be met. So with that, we would ask that the council designate August 2nd, 2021 as the date for the FY22 City of Moscow budget hearing.
Maureen.
Oh, I move that we set the, well, I didn't have questions. Go ahead, anybody have questions?
I do have a quick question, actually. So I
I'm
know
just like moving on this fast one.
Go to Ann, let's go to his.
I know that a lot of work goes into the budget before we see it as counselors. I'm just curious where you're at in the process at this point in the year.
Right now, we've changed the process a little bit. The finance director's taking a greater role in it. She is gathering all of the data. Final budget numbers or proposals from departments are due tomorrow. They will then be vetted out. She will go ahead and her staff will put that together, and we will begin interviews, my interviews with departments and groups. I believe 2 weeks after that, after which we will take some time. We should present a proposed balanced budget to the mayor the third week of May, excuse me, and we will have it ready to bring to you after we balance it, bring it forward to you the 3rd week of June, so you should have 3 weeks prior to the budget workshops to review it.
Thank you.
Okay, Maureen.
I move that we set August 2nd, 2021 as the public hearing date for the City of Moscow for fiscal year 2022 budget.
Second.
I'm gonna give that to Brandy.
That's good. That'll work.
You guys tied. Okay, we have a motion by Maureen and a second by Brandy to set August 2, 2021 as the public hearing date for the City of Moscow's FY 2022 budget. I'll start the roll with Art.
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
Gina.
Aye.
Ann.
Aye.
Maureen.
Aye.
And Brandy.
Aye.
Okay, August the 2nd it is, everybody. With that, we'll start with reports. That's the end of our regular agenda, and I'm gonna start with Ann.
Yeah, I have-
Anything for us tonight, Ann?
I have one for all the commissions. So historic preservation, a lot of the discussion was about the Orchid Awards and looking at possible contenders. Police Knowledge Corridor, so my Pullman counterpart was talking about what we can do, what PKC can do to align with city interests essentially. So there was some good discussion about what that looks like, recognizing the entire economic development ecosystem. And then tonight, actually, Tree Commission met right before this, and they were planning their annual sapling giveaway at the First Farmers Market. And this is going to be more of a private event than in typical years, but their Arbor Day celebration, which is going to happen on April 30th from 11 to noon at Lola Clyde Park.
Nice. April 30th. Okay, Maureen.
The Planning and Zoning Commission met, and they spent a lot of time talking specifically about what's going to happen at Legacy Landing, and they laid out that it was going to have, which is at 6th and Jackson Development, 6 commercial tenants and 1 cafe section tenant, and 8 enclosed parking spaces. They really took care of the parking issues. The 2nd and 3rd floor will have apartments, and people kind of talked about that. There's bikes. It seems like a really great move, and that's basically what its main focus was. The Human Rights Commission, just to put everybody back on notice, April 8th at 6 o'clock, we're going to have the panel on restorative justice. And we have 3 great presenters.
Which you were facilitating, is that right, Maureen?
Yeah, and I know the people, and they're great.
Nice.
So we have a presentation on the legal aspects of restorative justice. We have one on education, which is really fascinating. And we have one on the Native American Peacemaker project.
Awesome. Brandy.
The Urban Renewal Agency met, and it was kind of the audit presentation and annual report review and capital projects review. So that's all available for anyone to see on the Moscow Urban Renewal Agency website. It's a great, great graphics and packet that shows the year in review of everything that's been accomplished. And once again, the audit was great with no issues coming from President Gage's assessment. That's all I have.
Okay, Art.
Yeah, one more thing on the URA that both Brandy and Maureen mentioned was the development at 6th and Jackson, that the URA approved of the preliminary plans and therefore went on to Planning and Zoning Commission for their review. And things are on track to finally get that plot of land developed into something finally. Fire department, we heard a lot about that already tonight. The volunteers are working on fundraising projects now, and the rest of it you heard already. Smart Transit Board, they've received a grant for $493,000 for technology funding, which means that they'll be putting together new software that'll be online that not only gives out the bus schedules, but also tells you in real time how long your wait is going to be at a bus station and what's going on. So that little piece of software will be coming online and looks pretty swank. So it sounds great and should help people understand better how the whole system works. And right before this meeting, there was the Farmers Market Commission meeting that Amanda told us considerably about tonight, but another vacancy has arisen on the farmers market. One of the commissioners had to quit because they're no longer going to be participating in the market, one of the vendor reps, so we're going to be looking for another vendor rep for that. The registration cost for vendors has gone up with no comments from the vendors because it was $1 per year for the tier 2 people and $2 per year to register from the tier 3 folks. The biggest bit of chat came in where they're looking to modify the 200 air mile radius around Moscow as the source for vendors for the produce and other products at the farmers market. So they're forming a subcommittee to study, is 200 air miles good? Should it be less? Should it be defined by county boundaries? So on and so forth. So this is going to get heavy into the weeds for the Farmers Market Commission. And lastly, they decided on a new branding contract with Julian Ewart to produce branding opportunities for farmers market, whole new sets of graphics and common design palette for use for the market now and into the future.
Who was that? Art, what was the name?
Julene Ewart. She's a market vendor and has done a lot of work over at U of I and has got a lot of national campaigns out there. And so the commission unanimously decided on her.
Wasn't it, didn't they go through like a
They had a dozen applicants for it and narrowed it down to 2, and today,
She was the winner.
5 hours ago or so, they determined this. Yeah.
Very nice. Sandra?
It's been a slow little bit for me. I had the Sustainable Environment Commission, and
COVID flubbing everything up. However, and that just killed everything for the flight industry for well over a year, but flights and businesses for airlines are really starting to pick up and are excelling. A number of these organizations are adding to pilots and as well as all their other staff, and that includes Alaska. Southwest Airlines is putting a ton of people back on. And so now it's getting geared back up because you got this pent-up demand for people to get out and get them moving with the vaccine. And it ties right into the vaccinations, availability of vaccinations. And I read a report where there was 187 million people already vaccinated in America. And of course, I've heard all kinds of, I'm not exactly sure if that's a proper number, but that's the latest one that I saw, folks. So we're getting there. They're chewing through 3 million of these a day. And as we all know, anybody over 16 in the state of Idaho and almost anywhere can get these shots now. It's just a matter of churning the rest of the people through it. And with that being said, I have said this before, I am vaccinated, and I think everybody, all the council is, and most all of us. So anyway, FYI. With that, Gary, do you have any reports?
Working on Boise too, okay?
I'll never give up on Boise, ever.
Nothing further.
Okay, well, with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session per Idaho Code 74-206, 1 and F, and this meeting will not reconvene at the end of that.
So moved.
By Sandra?
Second.
I'll start a roll with Ann.
Aye.
Maureen?
Aye.
Randy?
Aye.
Gina?
Aye.
Sandra?
Aye.
And Art?
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned at 9:27, folks.